Is that okay for you? It would not be Loper football without hearing Dave Jenner laugh, right? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the University of Nebraska Kearney. We are here to unify the Loper family and celebrate the hiring of the 18th football coach in the history of the University of Nebraska at Kearney. While this press conference will highlight Josh Lynn and Loper football, I'd like to make some opening remarks. First of all, thank you all for being in attendance this morning with us. Chancellor Christensen, his staff, and I are thankful that you are all a part of this special event. Second of all, thank you all for respecting the privacy of our candidates and the professionalism of a search of this magnitude. It's not easy to move swiftly and quickly without some exposure, but I think we did it pretty well. Third is I feel really good about our process. We stuck to the university system and we did things right. In the end, every applicant received a personal response from me. Fourth and lastly is I'm really excited about the future of Loper football and Loper athletics. I understand that change brings anxiety and uneasiness, but we have many accomplishments to hang our hat on, not only in football, but in our athletic department. This past fall, our 435 student athletes had a grade point average of 3.25. Our women's basketball team had the highest team GPA at 3.6, and our men's tennis team was the highest in our men's sports at a 3.45. 13 out of 17 teams had above a 3.25 grade point average. In 2016, we had 13 All-Americans. This fall, 5, including National Player of the Year Annie Wolf, and career tackle record holder, none other than Tyke Kozel. The Buckle Court, which you see to your right, is where the Loper volleyball team, our men's and women's basketball team participate. Women's volleyball has won 35 games since we christened this court the Buckle Court. Basketball has gone 31-13. All three combined has a winning record of 66-13 since naming the Buckle Court. 2 weeks ago, Coach Lamberson resigned to take a position at Abilene Christian, which put me into full-go mode in order to wrap the holiday season around a search for a new head football coach. In a week, we had over 70 applicants, 15 current standing head coaches, and we interviewed face-to-face 4 individuals who we considered our finalists. I could have closed my eyes, threw a dart, and been successful with any of those 4 candidates. The criteria we looked for in a head football coach was, number 1, a proven winner. 2 is someone who knows the game of football, the X's and O's. 3 can do more with less. 4 understands Nebraska. 5 has a heart for our players. And 6 can sustain the Loper family culture. Senior Associate Athletic Director Josh Jorgensen and I met with each candidate. We learned about them, their expectations, and their needs for being our next head football coach. We turned over every stone during the review process. This past weekend, I offered the job to Josh Lynn. As a current standing head coach, he needed to think, pray, and seek counsel before making a decision of this magnitude. He also needed to close out his business at his alma mater. This morning, Coach Lynn met with about 40 football players and our current coaching staff. 4 of our current 6 full-time coaching staff, 2 graduate assistants and student assistants, still remain in place and will meet with Coach Lynn to strategize for recruiting and determine the best staffing mix for UNK for the future. We have 150 prospects lined up to visit Kearney starting Thursday, January 12th and wrapping up on January 27th. National Signing Day is on February 1st. 85 talented and ambitious players return to UNK this weekend and will begin work on Monday with our new strength and conditioning coach, Steve Schultz, and our coaching staff. We could not be more excited to announce and today introduce David Josh Lynn is our 18th head football coach. We did not go looking for him. He rose to the top of a deep, talented, and rich pool of applicants. What makes him special is that he's best for UNK today and will be even better for the long term of Loper football. He's a ball coach. He can teach the game of football, and his success is proven. He's resourceful. He knows how to stretch the imagination of a program while squeezing every dime along the way. He's UNK's version of Moneyball. His players love him. He's been referred to as a player's coach by many of those that I've talked with. He understands Nebraska. His family ties to Kearney and his passion to have a staff with Nebraska connections makes this a really special hire. Lastly, and most importantly, he will sustain the Loper family culture. The Loper standard, which has its foundation in accountability, trust, and brotherhood, will be emphasized by Coach Lynn as he implements his Count on Me philosophy, where our program will become winners on the gridiron, in the classroom, and in our community. On behalf of Loper Athletics, the University of Nebraska Kearney, the City of Kearney, and the State of Nebraska, I would like to welcome Josh's wife, Pam, their children, Carly, Bryson, and Levi, and Pam's parents. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring up and introduce to you the 18th head football coach of the University of Nebraska Kearney, Josh Lynn. Coach, congratulations. It's great to have you. I know we got to do a couple photo shoots here. Okay, go get them.
All right, thanks, Doc. Well, first of all, good morning. Hey, and go Lopers. You know, before we get started here, I need to, I'd like to acknowledge a couple people here, and then before I get going with just a brief summary of the expectations of Loper football. Number one, I'd like to acknowledge my wife and my family. They're my rock, and you know, leaving your alma mater, leaving the state of New Mexico, leaving a good support system there, leaving a good football team. You know, that's tough, and a coach's wife is a special person along with their family. And so the first person I'd like to acknowledge is my wife, Pam. Okay. Hey, the next thing is my mother-in-law, Sue Zins, my father-in-law, Gary Zins. I'd have to say this, the number one recruiter that you guys have on campus was my father-in-law, Gary Zins, when this job came open. He lives in Fedora. They're from Fedora, South Dakota, which is a little small town. He spends a lot of his time up there, and he was selling it just as much as anybody. Another person I'd like to acknowledge is my family back home. David Lynn, who is a head football coach at Roswell High School. My brother Jeff Lynn, who, my brother's the head coach at Roswell High School. My dad is a Hall of Fame coach in the state of New Mexico. Those guys are a big part of my life, and I'd like to acknowledge those guys. Last thing I'd like to acknowledge is I'd like to acknowledge Eastern New Mexico University. If I don't have those guys, I wouldn't be standing here right now. They believed in me. We got the program turned around, and it was a hard decision to leave Eastern New Mexico University. Moving forward, I'd like to acknowledge all the players in this room right now. And I got to meet with them briefly this morning. And I could tell right away that they're hungry. And they want to be a part of something good, or if not great. And, you know, the one thing about football players is you get them in a room and you start asking questions. You ask for questions, and a lot of times you don't get a lot of questions. But what I could tell in that room is they're eager, and they're interested, and gosh, they want this thing to move forward, as I do. Okay? So with that said, I do believe in the Count on Me system. And the Count on Me system is very simple. Okay? Number one, we have to count on our young men, and we have to count on the people at this university okay, to make sure our young men are handling their business in the classroom. All right? Count on me to be solid in the classroom. Okay? The next thing I'd like to acknowledge is we have to have our young men, all right, be productive members of the town of Kearney and the state of Nebraska. All right? You know, it goes a long way when a young man acknowledges people when they walk down the hall. It goes a long way when we have a football player, a Loper football player, open a door for a lady who's walking behind them. It goes a long way to sit up and take your hoodie off and sit in the front of the class and acknowledge people, acknowledge your teachers. It goes a long way. So we have to count on our young men to be productive members of society, okay, the productive members of the town of Kearney. The last thing we have to do with Loper football and our young men is they have to be the best football players they can be. All right, they have to develop, and they have to make a commitment to being developed, all right, to becoming the best football player they can be. Okay, part of bringing success to a football team, okay, is the young men that's in it. Okay, it's the coaching staff that's currently in place. You know, it's the evaluation system that goes into something like this. All right, but the number one thing is our young men reaching their full potential as football players. And whether their full potential is being a starter for the Lopers, whether their full potential is being all conference for the Lopers, whether their full capability is being an All-American for the Lopers, that's what we have to get them to achieve. Everybody can start on a football team. It takes a special team to get something higher. So we have to have them to reach their full potential as a football player. Okay? And the last thing is, to tie this all in together, all right, no one single area can be the same. You can't handle each area differently. They've all got to be the same. Excuse me, I worded that wrong. All right, every single area that I just talked about, being good in the classroom, being a member of the town of Kearney, a productive member. All right, and number three, being a great football player. All three of those things has to be handled exactly the same. All right, every single one of those we treat the same in the current that we're going to put forward, in the current football program that we're going to put forward. All right, you cannot be one in good area and not be good in the other. We handle it just like a tripod. You can't have one leg without the other. The whole thing's going to follow through. All right, my philosophy when it comes to coaching, young men and football players in a football program is it comes from the good book itself. Okay, it's Proverbs 12:1. He who loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid. Okay, and all that's saying is be coachable. Take the knowledge, take the discipline that everybody here at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, all right, is going to give you. All right, learn from it, and don't be so stinking hard-headed that you don't listen to people. Be coachable. Take the discipline we're going to give you. We're going to put our guys through some mentally and physically tough times through discipline. All right, take that, learn from it, and be better for it. Okay. Last thing I'd like to say is, and I'm gonna flip the page on you a little bit. Okay. We got to count on our football players to do those three things. All right, classroom, being good people, and football. The next thing is I'm gonna flip some stuff on you. We've got to count on everyone in this room right now. All right, to get on board. We need to count on you to be supporters, to help these young men out when they need a little help on an English paper. We need some help with our strength coach when we got to have to do something extra. We need some help in the town. You know, if these guys aren't acting right, I need to know. Okay, we need to count on you, and we need to count on our football players to jump on board and count on all of us together to be successful here. With that said, hey, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited about this new coaching staff. I'm excited about the young men that showed up today. They had to come back a little bit earlier from Christmas break, but we had 40 of them show up, and we had a good visit this morning. And I'm excited to get things going. So with that said, count on me, and go Lopers. And what we'll do at this time, we'll open up any questions that you guys might have.
Josh, why here? Pretty tough to leave your alma mater, a place that you love, a place that had a good football team, a lot of guys coming back next year, looking at comparable salaries, looking at the connection you had here. There doesn't seem to be a lot of arrows that point the same direction. Why UNK?
That's a great question. And the question was, why here? Why UNK? Okay. Number one, I look at things a little bit differently than a lot of coaches, okay? Sometimes different is good. And, sometimes change is good. And, when I looked at UNK and when I came on my visit, the number one thing that I noticed with Dr. Polinsky is he's committed to getting this thing going. He's adamant about it. Josh Jorgensen, I know he's only been here for a couple, 3 weeks, but he was adamant about going. And, sometimes, we did have a good thing going at Eastern New Mexico University, a great thing. I mean, they're got a lot coming back and things like that. But I'm going to tell you this is a chance to do something good, if not great, if we can get this thing turned around. And, the opportunity in itself and the excitement in itself is really what drove me to come here. Next question.
What about offensive philosophy? I know that there's a lot of talk about. See, you're smiling already.
That's right.
The triple option question is coming.
I've been prepping for this one since I took this job, so here we go.
And go. What are you expecting to do offensively?
Okay, offensively, number one, offensively, defensively, and special teams, we're going to be different. We're going to try to do something different, and I think it is important to do something differently than anybody else in the MIAA. And I'm going to say this, the MIAA is the best conference in Division II football, and I understand that. Okay, to answer your question, okay, there's going to be an option principle to what we do offensively. Okay, now I've done it both ways. I've done it out of the shotgun, I've done it under center. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get in here and I'm going to evaluate the guys that we have here right now. I'm going to evaluate the quarterbacks that we have here, the skill personnel, the receivers, just everything in general. We're going to get a good evaluation through a good offseason, and we're going to be different. I'm going to tell you that, and it's going to have some form of option principle.
What are you going to tell the recruits when you have a chance to meet them?
Okay, good question. The question was, what are you going to tell recruits when they show up? I'm going to tell you what we do is, we're going to sell the fact that we're different. We're the only school in Nebraska in the MIAA. That's something right there. They've got to come out here and play us. Next thing too is all these guys sitting in this room, they're ready for change. I think everybody in the town of Kearney is ready to win some football games. Another thing too is the great education that you get here at UNK. And Dr. Polinsky was very adamant and explained that to me in detail about the education that we're going to get here. So this is what I'm going to sell. We're going to sell great education, okay, and we're going to sell getting to the point to where we win games. And I think when you weigh everything else in, facilities, when you weigh in all the other stuff, that stuff will come along. But that's what we're going to sell.
Speaking of recruits, Ray Havens wants to know if you're going to try to stay with recruiting in-state players.
Absolutely. The state of Nebraska is our number one concern. And I think to develop culture, I think to retain athletes, I think to have a core of players, I think you better recruit your backyard first. Good question.
Talk a little bit about your count on me philosophy. Where did that come from, and specifically, what does that mean to you?
Well, that's how I firmly believe. First of all, I got it. Lou Holtz was a big count on me guy, and his isn't entirely like what we set up like, or what I set up. But you look at a college football program, all right, and you look at graduating athletes, and you look at winning games. Another thing I didn't mention is all three of those areas go hand in hand. In my general experience as a football coach, as in dealing with young men, all right, is if you don't have a good attitude outside of the university, your grades are probably going to struggle. Okay, if you don't have a good attitude, you're probably not happy in football. Okay, if you're not doing well in football, that generally has a direct correlation to you having a bad attitude outside of football and in the community. Okay, and the last thing too, if you don't have grades, you can't play football. So all three of those things go hand in hand. And if you want to develop a football program, I believe those are the three major steps, which they should be in anything you do.
In terms of retention, both players and coaches, what are you expecting?
The question was when the retention part, what am I expecting? Anytime you take over a program, I think there's already a built-in excuse for maybe for somebody to leave. I hope that doesn't happen. I told these guys earlier, when Rich Rodriguez took over at the University of Alabama, his whole thought process was, and I believe this, is, get in there and, I'm not only looking at them, but they're also looking at me when I'm talking about my football players. So I hope when we talk about retention, I hope everybody sticks around and sees what we're developing here. And I hope that through the work over the next semester and, in the next couple of weeks that young men see what we're doing here and get excited about what we're doing here. And I hope, that has something to do with retention.
And for the coaching staff, whether it's your choice or theirs?
Yes, and that's the question was the coaching staff. I know that there's a bunch of good guys back there, and Dr. Plincy's been very adamant about that. And in favor of them, we're going to sit down. I'm going to sit down with every single one of those coaches individually, and we're going to discuss the direction of UNK football, and we're going to make decisions for the young men that are in this room and for the best fit for UNK Loper football.
You mentioned coming from a coaching background, your father being a Hall of Fame coach and your brother being a coach. What have you learned from your dad and from your brother that you've used in your coaching?
First of all, the question was having the family background, father as a coach, brother as a coach, a football coaching background, what have I learned? Well, when you're around it every day for your entire life, when you're up there tackling dummies while they're practicing at 3 years old, you tend to pick some things up. The next thing is when you start dealing with a football culture family, and that's what we are here, and I hope that's what we develop here. The big thing I've learned from being a part of a coaching family is, to be successful. My dad always said that number one, your coaches better care about your players. Number two, your coaches better care about your players better care about your coaches. Number three, your coaches better care about your coaches because you spend a lot of time together, okay? And then the last thing is, all right, your players better care about your players better care about each other, and I think they do. All of my 5 minutes this morning. So, you look at a team. Yeah, a team's great, but when you get on the family side of it, it's a heck of a lot better. So, when you look at family football, you kind of realize that when you grow up around it. So, next question.
Really ironic here. Chuck Patient says bring home a championship.
Man, that one always comes out, right? That's kind of a loaded question, right?
This is a program that's had 10 wins over the last 5 years.
Yes, sir.
How long does it take to kind of get things turned around, going in the right direction?
The key word here is patience. Okay, and I'd like to come in here and knock the podium over and jump up and high five Josh over there, all right, and say, hey, we're going to compete for the MIAA championship as well. And if you compete for an MIAA championship, you're going to compete for the big one. Trust me, all right. But the key word here is patience, and and let me be clear when I talk about this, that is the standard, okay. But and Coach Lamberts has done a good job of developing and moving forward to that. Where my job is to come over and continue to do that, and to build a championship team takes a little patience, it takes a little time, and it takes establishing your culture and what you do in a football program. So the question there is the answer to the question, I'm just going to say we got to be patient and we've got to do things right.
What was key then in the turnaround in Eastern New Mexico that maybe you will use in your philosophy?
One of the keys was the fact of being different, doing something completely different than anybody else in the conference did. When you talk about offensive schemes and defensive schemes. The next thing too, another thing too that people don't talk about when you take over a situation like UNK football is I guarantee those guys in the back there, they're ready to do something different. They're ready to go out there and win football games. And so to answer your question, I think the big turnaround was selling the fact of being different and the fact that those young men back there jump on board and get tired of getting the same results and do something different to get new results. So I believe that was the major turnaround. It all deals with the players. If they believe you and they believe in what you're doing, and you can always build something on if you can get those guys' minds right.
What did you talk to the players about when you had your brief meeting with them?
This morning, it's more just kind of a meet and greet. I tell you what, I'll be back on Monday. I'm going to fly back on Sunday, and then I'll be right back about, hopefully mid-afternoon on Monday. And then we're going to have a team meeting on Tuesday. And, that'll be the big talk when we get everybody in the same room together. However, what I did talk about with our young men this morning is, just getting to know each other. The next thing is I think they wanted to feel the excitement, and I wanted to feel the excitement from them. And, we just talked about getting this thing going, and it's more or less just kind of a meet and greet.
What will you talk to them about when you do have that meeting on Tuesday?
Well, the question was, what will I talk about in my first team meeting? What I'm going to address, guys, is number one, that we're all in this thing together, and the next thing is I'm going to be real clear about what we need to do in the classroom and the way we need to handle our business when it comes to getting to places on time. And there'll be some guidelines and stuff that we talk about in that meeting. And the next thing, we'll talk about culture, what we want to do and where we want to go.
Coach, you talk about doing something different. Do you mean that what you're going to install here is going to make it difficult for your opponents to prepare for you?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
More difficult than it would be for them, for instance, to prepare for other opponents?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of different there's a lot of different offenses out there. There's a lot of different defenses. There's certain things you can do on special teams. The question was, doing something different. The question was, what is the definition of different? Yeah, I think it's important that you do something different in regards to doing something different that the other schools and the other great university football teams in this conference, don't necessarily see every week.
Couple more questions. All right, Coach is going to do some one-on-ones with the media, and then he'll be available to meet the rest of the community and team.
Do I have any real quick? Do I have any parents in here in the audience right now? We got any questions? I got a dad back. Got a couple dads back there. Do you guys have any questions? All right. Yeah. All right. So hey, thank you guys for coming. So hey, I know my family and myself, and we're excited to be here, and this is, I can't emphasize, the excitement and also the opportunity that we have here, and not only to do something great here at UNK, and most notably UNK football. So I look forward to meeting every single one of you. I apologize if I don't catch your name the first time, but I promise I'll catch it the second or third time. All right, a lot of new faces, but hey, I'm glad to be here, and I'm excited to get with those guys back there and get going. In off season and in the spring football and recruiting, and with that said, go Lopers. Thank you.
That's the end of the press conference. Corbin and I are going to sign off for now. We'll be at the video next week, but he's a good guy. We like him a lot. We'll have plenty more for that tonight. 6 to 10. Love it. Brr, baby. All that. Those name drops.